little shabby.
As a second follow-up single from the Rolling Stones to I Can't Get No Satisfaction, recorded in late '65, released in February '66. The reason I wanted to show that one, one thing, it's one of the last real guitar duet things going on between Keith and Brian Jones. Keith is playing those suspended seconds, I think they are, and Brian's playing this low part. Those parts that Keith was playing is
Diddly Daddy.
Illustration of his style. It was there before he began to use those open tunings, but those suspensions, he was always using those, you know, or that's the most evident one he was using, but he's in standard tuning here, so. Which will evolve into, you know, the use of the suspended fourth, very similar, and he uses those two here and there. Moving on, you can call it. And now we're in 1966, but we're going to go back a little bit further to go over something. According to Keith, first time he played guitar, it was at the urging, or the way he got into it was seeing his maternal grandfather, Gus Dupre, his acoustic guitar, which he had in his house when he was a young kid. When Keith was a young kid, he used to go over there and see the guitar. And the song that his grandfather wanted him to play was a flamenco song called Malagueña. And I'm sure that wasn't it that I just played, but it's something, has a few of those little melodies in it. And this next song, now we're in 1966, near the beginning of '66. We're getting into the mid-period Stones. And Keith comes up with a song by playing this riff. So that melody right there, or rather the I see a red door and I want to paint it black. I want to paint it's basically what Mick Jagger sings. That's the melody he uses. And he writes lyrics to it, and then they got the other part, of course. And another aspect of the song, of course, is the fact that what Brian Jones is playing on the sitar. the Indian instrument, the sitar. He's playing that melody too, behind the vocal and Keith's guitar. And that about sums up that song, Painted Black, which was a big hit for them back then and still played. Great song. One thing I wanted to say before we move along with Brian Jones, this is one of his most fruitful periods with the Stones from 66 through 67. But the odd thing about it is he pretty much gave up playing guitar. He started to play everything else but guitar. And in this song he's playing sitar, which George Harrison had done close to a year earlier on Norwegian Wood. But the influence was there, the world music influence, and then they got into psychedelia. But Brian Jones was brilliant. He played a lot of other instruments, but he was giving up guitar really. So we're now in close to the end of 66, going into 67, into an atypical period of the Stones. And I say that because it's a kind of a real pop period for them. They were very pop rock. They certainly weren't bubblegum or anything like that, but they had a lot of commercial success. And there was a double-sided single they released right at the beginning of 67. And turns out both songs were really written by Keith Richards, as far as the music goes, on piano. He does play piano. He certainly plays it better than me. You know, if you've ever seen clips of him playing, you know he can play. He's not a pianist, but he does write songs on piano. And one of his bigger songs is called Ruby Tuesday. And it's said that he pretty much wrote this himself. It says Jagger Richards, of course, on the song. Some people say that Brian Jones helped him on the music. He certainly played great recorder on it, recorder being a wooden flute. And you can see clips. He's a great musician. Again, this is the period where he's playing almost everything but guitar. He plays recorder in this one. On the next one, he plays organ. There's ones he played dulcimer, kind of an Appalachian old folk instrument. That's on Lady Jane. Then getting into, well, let's go a little further on. But anyway, let me play a snippet of a couple songs if I can get through it on piano. She would never say where she came from. Yesterday don't matter if it's gone. While the sun is bright or in the darkest night, no one knows. She comes and goes. That was #1 on the charts. Pretty much written by Keith. Let's go through another one he wrote on the piano. This one is more of a rocker, and he didn't really play piano on the recordings on either of these songs. They were played by a guy named Jack Nietzsche, who was a known session player back then, American guy. Can't really spell the name, but it's pronounced Nietzsche. There's a Z in there somewhere. He worked a lot with Phil Spector, and he played on a few Stone songs in the early recordings. In fact, he played on Play with Fire. He played the harpsichord on that. You heard the recording. But also played on this one. Let's spend the night together. Now I need you more than ever. Let's spend the night together now. Well, I don't play piano, but you can see what Keith did again. He gives Jagger that little riff there. What the melody's based on. So he writes that lyric to that and sings there exactly that. Let's spend the night together now. Now we're going to move on to the Cult of Keith. When I heard that back around December 1968, I knew there was something different about the Stones sound. That's the song that hit me the most, and I heard it on this album, because I've had, again, since 1968, Beggar's Banquet. One of the best albums, rock and roll albums ever made, for sure. And this was, give you a look at the inside if you can see. Hopefully you can see some of that. But this was the beginning of Keith Richards almost revolutionizing the way electric guitar could be played. Or at least he innovated the way it sounds in open tunings, using open tunings to utterly change the sound. They had been used before, but not in this way. He created a whole unique style. This is where he began to do that. But the way he played open tunings was different than anybody. And here's where, on Street Fighting Man, it wasn't the first one recorded. Actually, Jumpin' Jack Flash was, but he was using an E tuning. Now, an open E, tuned to the chord of E. But the way he recorded it, he didn't use an electric guitar on that song. On the album version of that song, He didn't use an electric guitar, he used an acoustic guitar. This is where the open tuning sound started for the Stones and for Keith Richards, from Keith Richards. This is where he really started to become the most innovative, and really it went on the rest of the Stones' career. But he would eventually evolve into open G tuning, an acoustic guitar played into a Philips cassette recorder, one of the early cassette recorders, right in front of the microphone of it. And the cassette recorder in those days did not have a limiter on it. It didn't have something to stop it from distorting, and he just loved the sound he was getting out of that. What they did was rig up an extension speaker plugged into the Philips cassette, so they could record the acoustic. He was playing a Gibson Hummingbird, playing in this open tuning, and you hear that unique sound when you hear that record. Now, when I heard those songs, I knew something was different, and I couldn't put my finger on it. It took me years, and nobody ever seemed to notice it either, or mention it, or how to do it, but how they were doing it. But we knew something was different with the guitar sound on that. I didn't know it was open tuning. I'm only 15 years old when this comes out, so I had to figure it out, or probably saw somebody doing it years later. But this beginning open E or open D tuning, open D he used with a capo, and on this album, Beggar's Banquet, there's probably 6 of the 10 songs have open tuned, guitars tuned to open E. And Keith, this is the period where he starts to play all the guitars. Beggar's Banquet, almost all the guitars. The next album, Let It Bleed, he pretty much does play all the guitar parts. Brian Jones, again, is just fading away, either through lack of interest, through drug involvement. He's not contributing any. I want to say something about Mick Jagger, because really haven't said much directly about him. But without him and his lyrics and his performance and his vocals, this is all for naught. It's a non-starter. He's Jagger, Richards in that partnership. It might be Mick leading on some parts, and it might be Keith leading on others. In the early years, Keith is providing a lot of the melodies, a lot of the arrangements. So where's Mick at this point? This is Beggar's Banquet. Well, the first song on the album, which I think is it's one of my favorite Stone songs ever, Sympathy for the Devil. So how does Jagger bring it into the band? He brings it in something like this rhythm.
Myself, I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around for a long, long year. So many a man's soul and faith.
started out as that type of folk song, Dylan-esque thing, but written entirely by Mick Jagger. You know, so let's just get that straight. So what does Keith do on this? Well, on this version, he ends up playing bass, and it ends up very different.
1968, Mick Jagger brings in Sympathy for the Devil, a folk song, but it ends up kind of as this samba. Keith Richards plays bass, Mick singing, Keith plays guitar too, lead solo, play a little bit of that. Mickey Hopkins plays piano. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. Been around for a long, long year. Oh, many a man sold and fed. I was around when Jesus Christ had his moment down in pain. Made damn sure that Pilate washed his hands, sealed his fate. Yeah. Pleased to meet you. Hope you guess my name. Yeah. But what's puzzling you is just the nature of my game. Mean it. Pleased to meet you. Hope you guess my name. Oh yeah. But what's puzzling you is just the nature of my game. Yeah.
So
What he says.
that's how they recorded that track originally. So we're going to close out this episode. But stay tuned. There's going to be more. Anyway, I mentioned something called the Cult of Keith earlier in this episode. And what do I mean by that? Well, Keith Richards begins to get more and more of a following, starting 68, 69, and builds from there. His style, his musicianship, and his style. We're talking about this guy. So, yeah, he begins to stand out more in the Stones. Once he gets to those open tunings, once he uses those, he's so different from pretty much anybody else playing at that time. But Keith, again, makes it his own thing. So Brian Jones had been playing open tunings using slide mostly. He's a real traditionalist, Brian. He plays the slide, trying to play like Elmore James. Keith he makes it his own thing. A lot of times he's not using slide most of the time in open G, or even when he did in open E. So the Cult of Keith is his intense following that begins to develop at this time. Before then he's stuck back with the other Stones, but he begins to get his own thing. He plays all the guitars on Let It Bleed, almost all of them on Beggar's Banquet before that, and that's pretty much where we're at. And the song that really put me into the cult was a song called You Got the Silver, which is Keith's first solo vocal on a whole song. He sings the song. So I'm going to end with that. subscribe if you like this. There's more coming. I'm going to be talking about other musicians too. Feel free to make any comment you like. And thank you very much.
Baby, what's in your eyes? I saw them flashing like airplane lights. You fill my cup, babe, that's for sure. I must come back.